We're not in a recession. Well, that's always what we thought a recession was before. Well, welcome to Biden world. The recession has changed, folks. The recession will not be televised. So here we are with people who change words, change definitions, because the case that they would make the American people, I think, if they had to do it on the merits, is very weak. I mean, people shouldn't think about what is Biden saying this month versus last month. It should be, what was the promise that he made? What was the Biden campaign based on? And what have we actually seen?
8.5% inflation. That's the month of July number that came out this morning. It's down from 9.1% in June. Yay! Do you feel so much richer? Do you feel like, man, my trip to the grocery store, I couldn't believe how much money I was saving.
I'm just walking around slapping my butler with $100 bills, dressed like the Monopoly man. It's amazing.
I got to tell you, even the New York Times yesterday, they had an article about how expensive pizza was getting in New York City, and I thought, pretty soon that scooter's getting stolen from Buck again. These high inflationary times, I don't know what might happen. So inflation 8.5%. I'm going to play you a clip of Joe Biden saying it's 0% because they continue to try to redefine what words are. What is a woman? What is recession? What is a raid? What is inflation? They lie, and they lie. And along the way, some of you are looking around like, man, they're literally changing the definition in the dictionary of words to suit their political aims, not to mention the continued fallout over the raid on Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. And first, Buck, I want to play, just because it's 8.5% inflation, I feel like we should let people know what the Biden administration is trying to spin out there. And then we're going to talk about the continued fallout, which I think has rallied people around Donald Trump, the likes of which we have not seen in years. But first, they trotted out old Joe, put it in the teleprompter for him to read, and he said, today we received news our economy had 0% inflation in the month of July. 0%. This is real. This is the talking point that the White House is trying to sell. Listen.
I want to say a word about the news that came out today relative to the economy. Actually, I just want to say a number. 0. Today, we received news that our economy had 0% inflation in the month of July. 0%. Here's what that means. While the price of some things went up last month, the price of other things went down by the same amount. The result, 0 inflation last month, but people are still hurting, but 0 inflation last month.
Can I ask you a question, Clay? Is he so dumb that he actually thinks this is true, or is he so shameless that he's saying something that is obviously untrue to people because that's who he is? He's lied about plenty of things, and he thinks he has no choice. Which one? I feel like you could make a case for either. Which one do you think it is?
It is a really interesting question. And sadly, I think Joe Biden's ability to even understand what he's doing and saying from one moment to the next is tenuous. So I think, unfortunately, as many people who are dementia laden or in the stages of dementia, some moments you can have a conversation with them and you can think, oh, they're pretty sharp. Oh, they seem to be following it. And then you just get a sentence where you're like, man, they really don't know what's going on here. And it's sad. I know virtually every person out there listening to us right now has had a loved one, a friend that they have seen go through this. And so, Buck, I was watching the clip of Joe Biden. I'm sure you saw it, and I'm sure a lot of our audience did, of him landing in the helicopter and coming back from Kentucky. I guess it was Tuesday, and he couldn't put on his suit coat getting off of the helicopter. And then yesterday, I guess it was Monday coming back in the suit coat. Yesterday, Tuesday, he had the press conference with Senator Schumer. And Buck, did you see him shake Schumer's hand? And then Schumer went down the line and shook everybody's hand, probably 5-6 seconds. And he came back in the direction of Joe Biden. and it was as if Joe Biden didn't realize he had already shaken his hand because he put his hand out again. So to your point, I really think they're drugging this guy up, popping him up with whatever they need. Remember the video that he put out where his eyes were bugging out of his head, and then they put him in shades after that, potentially because they knew that it looked so ridiculous. I think they put it in the prompter and he reads it. And so I don't even think he's conscious of the arguments very often that he's making.
I do believe if you put that the Inflation Reduction Act is going to cut $11 billion.
Yeah,
I think he would. I think he'd read $11 billion off the prompter and probably not think twice about it. They are shameless about all of this because I also think that if you had Democrats in a moment of honesty and it was, is a clearly not of sound mind, too old for the job Biden, still better than any Republican alternative. And not even just Trump, any Republican alternative, they'll say yes. Because it's about a figurehead and it's about power. It's about the individual. What's up? Liz Cheney would say yes. Yeah. So, soon-to-be former Congress person, Liz Cheney. She's going to lose, I think, in about a week. But Clay, the Democrats view it as the presidency is really just about a baton of power now. And as long as their team has it, they're happy. The actual president himself, they've given up on this. They got used to it being really a lot about the president in the Obama era because they were so excited about him and they thought he was the most brilliant, amazing, wonderful politician in the history of the planet. Now it's just as long as our team is in charge and you have Democrats in the various agencies at the top and appointees, and that's all that really matters to them. So I don't even think that there's not even a sense of shame that they have about what you're talking about, which is does Biden even know what's going on? And it's fascinating as well. I mean, 8.5% inflation, they're celebrating this. Just so everyone's clear, they are celebrating. The real number is inflation's at 8.5%. It did not go up in the month of July. It went down a little bit. So this is a little bit like saying, if you're $100,000 in credit card debt and now you only are $90,000 in debt, out of the woods. Not really.
Yeah, and would you have ever believed we'd be in a position where 8.5% inflation is a victory lap for Joe Biden and Democrats? It's 8.5% increase off of last year, and they're trying to argue it's 0% month to month, but that's not even accurate because all of you who are going out are paying prices predicated on what you paid last year, right? So when you're going out and the numbers, I think I screenshotted one of the data points from the July inflation numbers. It's pretty wild how much some of these prices are up. And so the fact that they didn't go up a little bit more doesn't feel like a victory. To your point, Buck, when you're $100,000 in debt, if the next month you're still $100,000 in debt, that ain't a great feeling. I mean, you still got the debt. And I don't know, when we factor in the nearly $800 billion in expenditures, I don't know how we're not going to have massive inflationary pressure moving through the rest of the fall and into next year.
There's a brazenness with the way this administration operates. They've really gotten used to it, Clay. They'll call it the inflation. Now, I know that's Congress, but Biden's going to have to sign it. He's obviously involved in the discussion about the naming of it. The Inflation Reduction Act is not going to reduce inflation. That is
actually increases it, according to most economic experts.
And so the primary promise of this is false, and they just don't care. It does not matter to them. Are we in an economic downturn? We had 2 quarters of negative GDP. We're not in a recession. Well, that's always what we thought a recession was before. Well, welcome to Biden world. The recession has changed, folks. The recession will not be televised. So here we are with people who change words, change definitions, because the case that they would make the American people, I think, if they looked at if they had to do it on the merits, is very weak. I mean, people shouldn't think about what is Biden saying this month versus last month. This should be, what was the promise that he made? What was the Biden campaign based on? And what have we actually seen?
Well, and there's a great story out from Politico. I know we've discussed a lot the challenges that we're seeing in some of these Senate races as we come down. I think it's fair to say the proverbial home stretch here, certainly post Labor Day when everybody's summer vacations are over and all the kids are back in school. football's back. I mean, we'll officially be in campaign season. But there are some numbers I was reading from Politico this morning. I think Laura Ingraham shared it early this morning. There are Biden districts that he won by 14 and 15 points in Oregon, for instance, where there are Republicans that are up right now. So we know what happened with Myra Flores and down on the border with how much she swung a district that had voted for Joe Biden. We're talking about some of these very blue states in Oregon, 20-point swings that exist right now in the polling out there. And the discussion in the Politico article that I thought was intriguing was how many different places that theoretically are safe districts, Buck, where Democrats are acknowledging that they're going to have to spend fairly substantial dollars. And did you see, we got so close to Ilhan Omar almost lost her Democrat primary last night in Minnesota.
Yeah,
I mean, I think she won by like 2,000 votes.
The ideology of the squad, the progressive Democrats in the House, is a political liability now that we've seen enough of what that actually put into practice, whether it's defund police, a whole range of issues. But specifically on that one, it is a political liability for the Democrats nationally.
They're an anchor.
They understand that now. So sure, AOC will continue to she'll continue to be reelected in a overwhelmingly Democrat district in Queens, New York. But for anybody who's in a tough race, they're pretending now, oh, that's not the Democrat Party that I belong to. I belong to a Democrat Party you're going to hear a lot of working folks. You're going to see Democrats marching around, going duck hunting for the first time in places like, Missouri and states where in Michigan. All of a sudden, they're going to be wearing camo, Clay. These Democrats who are holding a gun like it's a laser from out of space that they've never seen before because, they're gun-toting Democrats. This is what always happens. They have to pretend to be less Democrat in order to actually get elected.
Yeah, and the person who almost beat Ilhan Omar, 500 Twitter followers. She has 3 million. It would have been, I was watching those election results come in last night, and I think it ended up 51-49, something like that. And the guy who was running against her was in favor of funding the police. He's a Democrat, obviously, but a sane one. In favor of funding police, a believer in business, a believer in capitalism. And in that district, she almost lost. And it makes me wonder, I kind of wish Republicans had gotten involved in that race like we've seen all the Democrats get involved in other races, because this guy had virtually no money. Imagine if somebody had spent $500,000 on his behalf. I think Ilhan Omar may well have lost.